The autumn evening was settling in over the city as Police Captain Chen finished reviewing the last stack of paperwork on his desk. The precinct's fluorescent lights hummed quietly overhead as he gathered his belongings, looking forward to his sister's birthday celebration. 20 years on the force had taught him to appreciate these peaceful moments, the quiet transition between duty and family time. He straightened his desk one final time, a habit ingrained from his early days as a rookie. The framed photo of his family caught his eye, bringing a slight smile to his weathered face. His sister had always supported his dream of becoming an officer, even when their parents had their doubts. Missing her birthday dinner wasn't an option. Changing out of his uniform in a locker room, Chen slipped into comfortable civilian clothes, a navy sweater and dark jeans. Fellow officers nodded respectfully as they passed by, some heading out, others just starting their night shifts. The camaraderie was palpable, built through years of shared experiences and mutual trust. "Heading to that family dinner, Captain," Officer Rodriguez called out as Chen walked through the bullpen. "Tell your sister happy birthday from all of us." Chen waved back with a warm smile. "Will do. Don't let Detective Singh slack off on those reports while I'm gone." Their shared laughter echoed through the precinct, a reminder of the lighter moments that balanced out their often serious work. The parking garage was mostly empty as Chen approached his new SUV. He just purchased it last month, a practical choice for family trips and weekend adventures with his kids. The dark silver paint gleamed under the garage lights as he unlocked it, tossing his gym bag onto the back seat. As he settled into the driver's seat, Chen checked his watch. If traffic cooperated, he'd make it to the restaurant with time to spare. His sister had chosen their favorite family-owned place downtown, where they'd celebrated countless special occasions over the years. The city streets were coming alive with evening energy. People heading home from work, others just starting their nights out. Street lamps flickered on one by one, casting warm pools of light on the sidewalks. Chen navigated through familiar neighborhoods, his mind already on the evening ahead. He'd picked up a special gift for his sister last weekend, a vintage cookbook she'd been eyeing for months. At a red light, he quickly checked his phone to make sure he hadn't missed any messages from his family. The restaurant was just a few blocks away now. Looking up, he noticed more police activity than usual in the area. A couple of patrol cars cruised slowly past, their officers scanning the streets with focused attention. Chen made a mental note to check in with dispatch later about any ongoing situations in the district. Even off-duty, his instincts remained sharp, always aware of his surroundings. The light turned green, and he continued toward the restaurant, unaware that his peaceful evening was about to take an unexpected turn. The streets in this part of town were narrower, lined with small businesses and restaurants that had served the community for generations. The familiar sign of his sister's favorite restaurant came into view just ahead. Chen signaled to turn into the parking lot, already anticipating the warm greetings and delicious aromas that awaited inside. That's when he noticed the flashing lights in his rearview mirror. Years of police work had taught Chen to stay calm in unexpected situations. He carefully pulled it over, positioning his vehicle safely against the curb. As he reached for his wallet containing his badge and ID, he couldn't help but wonder what had prompted the stop. His registration was current, and he'd been careful to observe all traffic laws. Little did he know, this routine traffic stop was about to become anything but ordinary. His experience as a police captain had prepared him for many things, but what was about to unfold would test not only his professional training, but also his personal resolve in ways he never expected. The sun had nearly set now, casting long shadows across the street. Through his side mirror, Chen could see officers approaching his vehicle with an unusual level of caution. Something about their stance told him this wasn't a routine traffic stop. His 2 decades of experience suddenly felt very present as he prepared to identify himself to his fellow officers. This was just the beginning of an evening that would reshape not only his perspective, but the entire department's approach to police work. As Chen waited with his hands visible on the steering wheel, following the protocols he'd taught countless times, he had no way of knowing that this moment would become a catalyst for change throughout the city's police force. The red and blue lights painted shifting patterns across the surrounding buildings as 3 patrol cars positioned themselves behind Chen's SUV. Through his rearview mirror, he could see the officers taking tactical positions, their movements precise and rehearsed. As a captain, he had overseen countless similar stops, but being on the other side felt surreal. "Driver, keep your hands where we can see them and turn off your vehicle." The command came through a patrol car's speaker, clear and authoritative. Chen followed the instructions carefully, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. His mind raced through potential reasons for this level of response. Something about this felt different from a routine traffic stop. The officer's positioning suggested they believed they were dealing with a high-risk situation. "Now, with your left hand only, open your door from the outside." The next command echoed off the brick buildings. The evening air felt suddenly cooler as Chen complied, acutely aware of the growing number of onlookers gathering on the sidewalk. Some had their phones out, recording the scene. As a police captain, he understood the public's right to document police activities, but experiencing it firsthand brought a new perspective. "Step out slowly, facing away from us, hands raised." Chen's police training kicked in automatically as he executed the requested movements. The weight of his badge pressed against his chest in his wallet pocket, but he knew better than to reach for it yet. Years of experience had taught him the importance of following commands precisely in high-stress situations. "Walk backward toward the sound of my voice, keeping your hands visible." The rough texture of the asphalt beneath his shoes provided a strange focus point as he walked backward. Chen could hear the quiet murmur of the growing crowd, the distant sound of city traffic, and the steady voice of the commanding officer. 20 years of police work had taught him to notice these details even in tense moments. "Stop. Get down on your knees. Cross your ankles." As Chen knelt on the cold pavement, he could feel the situation's gravity settling over the scene. The restaurant where his sister waited was barely visible from his position, its warm lights a stark contrast to the flashing police lights that now dominated the street. "Put your hands behind your head and interlace your fingers." The position was familiar. He'd directed countless suspects to assume it over his career. Now, feeling the strain in his shoulders as he complied, Chen gained a new appreciation for the vulnerability suspects must feel. The irony wasn't lost on him. One officer approached cautiously while 2 others maintained their positions, weapons trained according to standard procedure. Chen could hear the officer's steady breathing and the subtle crackle of a radio as they drew closer. "I'm a police captain," Chen said calmly, keeping his voice steady and clear. "My ID and badge are in my wallet, left front pocket." There was a momentary pause in the officer's approach, just a slight hesitation that spoke volumes. In that brief silence, the sound of another patrol car approaching added to the growing tension in the air. "Sir, I'm going to check your pockets. Maintain your position." The officer's pat-down was professional and thorough. Chen could sense the younger officer's training in every movement, recognizing techniques he'd helped teach at the academy. When the officer reached his wallet and found the badge, everything changed. The radio crackled to life. "Dispatch, be advised, possible ID verification needed." More vehicles were arriving now. Chen could hear them even with his back turned. Among them was a supervisor's car, its distinct siren pattern cutting through the evening air. The crowd had grown larger, their collective presence adding another layer of complexity to an already delicate situation. Through it all, Chen maintained his composure, understanding that this moment would have implications far beyond a simple case of mistaken identity. His mind was already processing how this experience could be used to improve training, to better understand both sides of police interactions. The supervising officer's footsteps approached, faster than protocol typically allowed. Chen knew this sound meant recognition had finally come. The next few moments would be crucial, not just for him, but for the department's relationship with the community watching from the sidewalks. As the supervisor's voice cut through the tension with a shocked captain, Chen remained still, knowing that how they handled the next few minutes would be remembered long after the lights stopped flashing. The evening had become more than just a missed birthday dinner. It had become a moment that would change perspectives on both sides of the badge. The crowd's murmurs grew louder as the situation's reality became apparent. Phones continued recording, documenting a moment that would soon become a catalyst for departmental change. The cool evening air carried the weight of unspoken questions that would need to be addressed in the days to come. The realization rippled through the assembled officers like a wave. The supervising lieutenant's face showed a mix of shock and dismay as he quickly ordered, "Stand down. Everyone stand down." The command carried both authority and urgency, cutting through the tense atmosphere. "Captain, we had no idea," the lieutenant stammered, helping Chen to his feet. The change in the officer's demeanor was immediate and visible. Weapons were holstered, postures shifted from tactical to apologetic, and the overwhelming police presence suddenly felt excessive. Chen brushed off his knees, feeling the grit from the pavement. His legs were stiff from kneeling, but his voice remained steady. "Let's move this conversation away from the crowd," he suggested, glancing at the growing number of spectators still recording with their phones. The officers created a small perimeter, their faces a mix of embarrassment and concern. The youngest officer, the one who had found Chen's badge, looked particularly shaken. His hands trembled slightly as he returned the wallet and credentials. "Sir, I can't begin to apologize." The young officer started, but Chen raised a hand to pause him. "Right now, we need to focus on proper procedure," Chen said quietly. "We'll discuss everything else later." Years of experience had taught him that emotional reactions needed to wait until after the situation was properly controlled. The lieutenant was already on his radio, updating dispatch and requesting the incident be logged appropriately. The flashing lights from the patrol cars continued to illuminate the scene in alternating red and blue, creating an almost surreal atmosphere. "Can someone tell me what prompted this stop?" Chen asked, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the circumstances. He could see his sister now, standing at the restaurant's entrance, concern evident on her face even from this distance. The senior patrol officer stepped forward, clutching his notepad. "We received a call about a suspicious vehicle matching your SUV's description, reportedly involved in an incident across town. The partial plate number was similar, and when we ran a check," he trailed off, realizing they hadn't actually completed the plate verification before initiating the stop. Chen absorbed this information, his mind already analyzing where the breakdown in procedure had occurred. The crowd's murmuring grew louder as people began to understand what had happened. Some were shaking their heads, others were still recording, and a few were making phone calls, likely to local news stations. "We need to document everything," Chen stated firmly. "Body cameras, dash cams, radio communications, I want it all preserved." He knew this incident would have ramifications beyond just this evening. It had to be handled transparently and by the book. The lieutenant nodded, already typing notes into his phone. "I'll have all footage tagged and saved immediately." "Do you want to file a formal complaint, Captain?" Chen looked around at the officers, seeing not just their uniforms but their humanity, the nervous adjustments of gear, the worry plances, the subtle signs of stress. He saw himself 20 years ago, a young officer learning that procedures existed for crucial reasons. "No complaint," he decided. "But I want this used as a training opportunity. Every officer here tonight will submit detailed reports. We'll review the footage together and identify where we can improve." A news van had pulled up at the end of the block, its antenna extending skyward. Chen knew they had limited time before this became a media circus. He needed to take control of the narrative, not to cover anything up, but to ensure this incident led to positive change rather than just sensational headlines. "Lieutenant, I need you to coordinate with media relations," Chen instructed. "Be transparent about what happened, but emphasize that we're using this as a learning opportunity to improve departmental procedures." The young officer who had found his badge stepped forward again. "Captain, I know this isn't the right time, but I'd like to learn from this. Maybe you could oversee our training review personally?" The request was unexpected but welcome. Chen saw the genuine desire to improve in the officer's eyes, reflecting the kind of change he had always tried to inspire in the department. "I'll do better than that," Chen replied. "I'm going to use this experience to revamp our entire approach to vehicle stops and identification procedures." The crowd was beginning to disperse as the immediate drama subsided, though plenty of phones remained pointed their way. Chen could see his sister had come closer, waiting patiently at a respectful distance. The birthday dinner was certainly delayed, but somehow he felt this evening might end up being more meaningful than anyone could have anticipated. The lieutenant was organizing the scene cleanup, directing officers to begin clearing the area. Body cameras were still recording, documenting every word and action. Chen knew these recordings would be watched hundreds of times in the coming weeks, analyzed for training purposes and procedural review. As the last patrol car's lights were switched off, the street returned to its normal evening lighting. The incident was over, but its impact was just beginning. Tomorrow would bring meetings, reports, and difficult conversations, but tonight had shown exactly why those things were necessary. The precinct's conference room felt unusually crowded the next morning. Early sunlight streamed through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the long table where officers from last night's incident sat with their notebooks open. The atmosphere was tense but focused. Everyone knew the significance of what they were about to review. The wall-mounted screen flickered to life, displaying the first frame of body camera footage. Chen stood at the front of the room, his presence commanding attention without needing to speak. Dark circles under his eyes suggested a sleepless night, but his demeanor remained professional. Before we begin, he addressed the room. I want everyone to understand something. We're not here to assign blame. We're here to learn. His voice carried the weight of experience, tempering authority with understanding. The lieutenant operated the video controls, and the events of the previous evening unfolded from multiple angles. The room fell silent except for the audio from the footage, commands being given, radio chatter, the ambient sounds of the city night. Several officers shifted uncomfortably in their seats as they watched themselves on screen. The young officer who had found Chen's badge kept his eyes fixed on his notepad, knuckles white around his pen. "Stop there," Chen said, pointing to a specific moment in the footage. "Notice the approach pattern. What do you see?" The room remained quiet for a moment before one of the senior officers spoke up. "We didn't follow standard plate verification protocol before initiating the stop." "Correct," Chen nodded. "And why might that be important?" A discussion began to flow, hesitant at first but gaining momentum. Officers pointed out various details: the lighting conditions, the positioning of vehicles, the crowd management challenges. Each observation added another layer to their understanding of what had transpired. The precinct chief had joined them silently, standing at the back of the room. His presence added gravity to the proceedings, but he let Chen lead the discussion. This was personal for everyone involved, but especially for the captain who had experienced it firsthand. "Here's something interesting," Chen said, advancing to another segment of footage. "Watch the bystanders. What do you notice about their reactions?" The footage showed the growing crowd, phones raised, faces reflecting a mix of concern and curiosity. One officer noted how the atmosphere had shifted when Chen's identity was discovered. "Public perception matters," Chen continued. "But more importantly, every interaction we have is an opportunity to build trust or break it." He paused the footage on a frame showing the young officer returning his badge. The morning sun had climbed higher, warming the room. Coffee cups sat empty on the table as the analysis continued. Each frame brought new insights, new perspectives on procedures they'd all taken for granted. Internal affairs representatives arrived midway through the review, quietly taking notes in the back. Their presence might have been intimidating once, but today it felt necessary, part of the process of turning this incident into meaningful change. "Let's talk about communication," Chen suggested, playing a segment where multiple officers were giving overlapping commands. "How could we have handled this differently?" The discussion that followed was thoughtful and honest. Officers shared their own experiences, times when they'd faced similar situations from the other side. The room felt less tense now, more focused on learning than defending actions. The young officer finally looked up from his notepad. "Captain," he started, his voice steady despite his obvious nervousness. "I've been thinking about ways we could improve our identification protocols, especially for plainclothes and off-duty officers." Chen gestured for him to continue, and the officer laid out a detailed proposal. His ideas were practical, showing how much thought he put into preventing similar incidents in the future. The precinct chief stepped forward then, addressing the room for the first time. "I want a full report on implementing these suggestions by the end of the week," he announced. "Captain Chen will oversee the development of new training procedures." Around the table, officers were already adding notes to their papers, expanding on the young officer's ideas. What had started as a review of a difficult incident was transforming into a collaborative effort to improve their department. Chen noticed the internal affairs representatives nodding approvingly. This wasn't just about one incident anymore, it was about systematic improvement, about turning a potential crisis into an opportunity for positive change. As the morning wore on, the discussion evolved from analyzing what went wrong to planning what would be different. Officers shared ideas freely now, drawing from their varied experiences to suggest improvements in everything from communication protocols to community relations. The chief's phone buzzed. Media requests were already coming in. Local news stations wanted interviews, community leaders were asking for meetings. The incident had sparked public interest, but not in the way anyone had expected. "We have an opportunity here," Chen concluded, standing before his colleagues. "Not just to change procedures, but to show our community how we learned from our experiences. Who's willing to help make that happen?" Every hand in the room went up without hesitation. The morning sun now filled the room completely, symbolic of the transparency they were committing themselves to. What had begun as a routine traffic stop had become a catalyst for departmental evolution. The Internal Affairs Office buzzed with activity as investigators pored over footage, reports, and witness statements. 2 weeks had passed since the incident, but its impact continued to ripple through the department. Stacks of papers covered desks, and monitors displayed freeze frames from various body cameras. "The community response has been unexpected," said the lead investigator, sliding a folder across her desk to Chen. Inside were printouts of social media posts, news articles, and letters from community members. People are actually praising the department's transparency. Chen leafed through the documents, pausing at a letter from a community youth group. They wanted him to speak at their next meeting about police-community relations. Similar requests had been flooding in since the incident became public. "How's the young officer handling everything?" the investigator asked, referring to the rookie who had found Chen's badge that night. "He's channeling it well," Chen replied, thinking of the comprehensive training proposal the officer had developed. "Sometimes our hardest moments become our best teachers." Down the hall, the department's technology team was implementing new protocols for vehicle identification. Multiple screens showed the updated system that would require plate verification before any high-risk stop. The team lead was explaining the changes to a group of senior officers. "Look at this feature," he pointed to a screen. "Now dispatchers can instantly cross-reference vehicle descriptions with department personnel databases. Something like this could have prevented." He trailed off, glancing apologetically at Chen. "Could have prevented my missed birthday dinner." Chen finished with a slight smile, putting the team at ease. His sister had rescheduled the celebration, turning it into a family discussion about police work that lasted well into the night. The police union representative entered the room, carrying more papers. "The committee approved all the proposed changes," she announced. "They're fast-tracking the new training programs. They want you to oversee implementation, Captain." Chen nodded, remembering the lengthy union meetings where they discussed the incident. Instead of becoming defensive, the union had embraced the opportunity for improvement. It was a refreshing change from the usual bureaucratic resistance. Outside his office, a local news crew was setting up for an interview. The department had decided to be proactive with media coverage, sharing the changes they were making. Transparency, they discovered, was building more trust than any prepared statement could. The Civil Rights Commission called again, his assistant mentioned, handing him another message slip. "They're impressed with the department's response. They want to use our new protocols as a model for other cities." Chen sat at his desk, reviewing the final draft of the incident report. Every detail was there: the initial call, the mistaken identification, the stop itself, and everything that followed. But more importantly, it included the changes sparked by that evening. The young officer knocked on his door, carrying a thick binder. "The new training manual is ready for your review, Captain," he said, his confidence noticeably stronger than 2 weeks ago. "We included sections on cross-precinct communication and off-duty officer identification." Together, they went through the manual, discussing various scenarios and responses. The officer had incorporated input from every level of the department, from dispatchers to senior command. It was comprehensive yet practical. "Have you seen today's community feedback?" the officer asked, pulling up an email on his phone. Local residents had organized a town hall meeting to discuss police-community relations, and attendance was expected to be high. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the office windows as they continued working. In the bullpen outside, officers were attending a new training session on communication protocols. The instructor's voice carried clearly, emphasizing the importance of verification and clear commands. Chen's phone buzzed, Another message from his sister. Proud of you, it read simply. She had watched him transform a potentially negative incident into something positive for both the department and the community. The deputy chief stopped by, carrying the latest statistics. Complaint rates are down since we implemented the new protocols, he reported. Officers are saying they feel more confident in their procedures, and the public is noticing the difference. As the day wound down, Chen gathered his things to head home. The incident report was complete, the new protocols were in place, and tomorrow would bring more training sessions. But something else had changed too. There was a new sense of purpose in the department. Looking out over the city as he left the building, Chen reflected on how a single traffic stop had catalyzed so much change. The evening lights were coming on, just like they had been that night, but now they seemed to symbolize something different: illumination, understanding, progress. The next morning would bring more work, more challenges, more opportunities for improvement. But for now, Chen felt satisfied knowing that sometimes the best lessons come from our most difficult moments. The department wasn't just changing its procedures, it was changing its culture, one interaction at a time. The community center buzzed with energy as people filed in for the town hall meeting. Every seat was filled, with more residents standing along the walls. At the front of the room, Chen stood quietly, watching faces both familiar and new. This wasn't just another police presentation, it was a chance for real dialogue. "We're not here to make excuses," Chen began, his voice carrying to the back of the room. "We're here to show you how we're changing and, more importantly, to listen to your ideas." The audience leaned forward, many nodding in appreciation of his directness. The young officer who had been involved in the incident stood nearby, ready to demonstrate the new protocols. His nervous energy had transformed into quiet confidence over the past month. On the screen behind them, body camera footage played silently, not from the incident, but from recent stops where the new procedures had made a difference. "Last month, I experienced something that many community members have faced," Chen continued. "It changed my perspective, and now it's changing our department." He gestured to the screens showing the new verification system in action. A woman in the audience raised her hand. "My son is learning to drive," she said, her voice carrying years of concern. "What should I tell him about traffic stops now?" Chen stepped aside, letting the young officer take the microphone. The officer's response was clear and compassionate, explaining the new procedures while acknowledging the fear many parents feel. The room grew quiet, absorbing his words. At the back of the hall, local reporters scribbled notes. This wasn't the confrontational meeting many had expected. Instead, they were witnessing something rarer: genuine dialogue between police and community members. "Can I share something?" Another resident stood up, an elderly man with gray hair. "I've lived here 40 years. This is the first time I've seen the police department admit to a mistake and actually make changes because of it." The discussion flowed naturally, touching on everything from traffic stop procedures to community engagement. People shared stories, asked questions, and offered suggestions. Each comment was noted, each concern addressed with honesty. Chen's phone buzzed quietly. A message from the chief. Other departments across the state were requesting information about their new protocols. What had started as a local incident was sparking interest far beyond their city limits. The young officer demonstrated the new identification system, showing how it protected both officers and civilians. "We're not just changing rules," he explained. "We're changing how we think about our role in the community." A teenage girl raised her hand next. "I'm in the Youth Police Academy," she said. "Will you be teaching us these new procedures too?" The question brought smiles. The next generation was already thinking about doing things better. The afternoon sun slanted through the high windows as the meeting continued. People who had come with crossed arms and skeptical expressions were now leaning forward, engaged in constructive discussion. The atmosphere had shifted from confrontation to collaboration. "This isn't just about one incident," Chen explained, showing slides of the new training programs. "It's about building a department that learns from experience and grows stronger through transparency." Community leaders who had initially demanded oversight were now offering partnership. Local business owners discussed hosting educational sessions. Religious leaders proposed joint community events. The room hummed with possibility. The young officer shared his personal journey, how the incident had transformed his approach to police work. His honesty touched people. Here was a clear example of positive change coming from a difficult situation. As the meeting wound down, people lingered, forming small groups to continue discussions. Officers and residents exchanged contact information, planning future meetings and community projects. The walls between us and them seemed a little thinner. A small girl approached Chen with a drawing. A police car with a big heart on its door. Her mother explained that she wanted to be a police officer someday. But one of the good ones, the girl added seriously, like you. The comment struck Chen deeply. This was why the changes mattered, not just for current officers and residents, but for future generations. Every procedure improved, every bridge built shaped what kind of department these children would either serve in or be served by. Outside, the evening was settling in as people left the community center. Many stopped to shake hands, share final thoughts, or simply say thank you. The reporters gathered around Chen for final comments, but his attention was on the conversations happening naturally between officers and residents. Tomorrow would bring more work, more training sessions, more procedures to refine, more relationships to build. But tonight had shown that real change was possible. The incident that could have divided their community was instead bringing it together, one conversation at a time. 6 months had passed since that fateful traffic stop. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the police academy's main lecture hall, where a new class of recruits sat attentively. Chen stood at the podium, now a regular speaker for the department's revised training program. Real change, he began, looking at the fresh faces before him, doesn't come from manuals. It comes from moments that force us to see things differently. The recruits leaned forward, already familiar with the incident that had transformed their department's approach to policing. The young officer who had found Chen's badge that night was now leading training sessions himself. He moved through the rows of recruits, handing out the new protocol guides they had developed together. The cover showed the department's revised motto: protect, serve, learn, grow. 6 months ago, I was on the other side of a high-risk traffic stop, Chen continued. Today, I'm going to show you how that experience changed not just our procedures, but our entire approach to community policing. The screen behind him displayed statistics: citizen complaints down by 40%, positive community feedback up by 60%, and officer satisfaction with new protocols at an all-time high. But numbers didn't tell the whole story. A video began playing, interviews with community members, officers, and local leaders discussing the changes they'd witnessed. The elderly man from the town hall meeting appeared, describing how relationships between police and residents had evolved. The best part, Chen explained, switching to a live demonstration of their new verification system, is that other departments are adopting these changes. What happened here is creating ripples across the country. In the back of the room, visitors from other police departments took notes. The incident had attracted national attention, not for its controversy, but for the positive changes it sparked. Their department had become a model for others seeking to improve community relations. The young officer stepped forward to share his perspective. His voice carried the confidence of someone who had learned valuable lessons from experience. The recruits watched intently. Here was someone who had turned a potential career-ending mistake into an opportunity for growth. We could have handled that night differently, the young officer admitted. We could have gotten defensive, made excuses. Instead, we chose to learn and improve. That's the kind of officers we need you to be. Outside the lecture hall, the department's community outreach program was in full swing. Local residents regularly participated in training sessions, sharing their perspectives and experiences. The walls between the police station and the community had become more permeable. Chen's sister had turned their rescheduled birthday dinner into a monthly tradition, bringing together officers and community members for informal discussions over meals. These gatherings had created countless connections and understanding that no official program could have achieved. The police chief entered the lecture hall quietly, nodding in approval as he observed the training session. Under his leadership, the department had embraced transparency and continuous improvement. Their success was drawing attention from police departments nationwide. Remember, Chen said to the recruits, every interaction is an opportunity to build trust or break it. Choose wisely. He showed them body camera footage from recent stops where officers had successfully used the new protocols, highlighting the positive outcomes. The young girl who had given Chen the drawing now attended their youth police academy. Her mother had become an active participant in community police dialogue sessions. Their story was just one of many examples of bridges built since that night. As the training session concluded, Chen noticed the recruit class's diversity, a reflection of their successful community outreach efforts. More local residents were seeing law enforcement as a way to serve their community rather than an opposing force. The afternoon sun cast long shadows as Chen walked through the precinct parking lot. He passed the spot where he had been stopped 6 months ago, now marked with a small plaque, "Where learning leads to change." It served as a daily reminder of their commitment to improvement. The young officer caught up with him, carrying feedback forms from the training session. "The recruits really connected with the presentation," he said. "They understand that making mistakes isn't the end, it's what you do afterward that matters." Looking out over the city they served, Chen reflected on how far they'd come. The incident that could have divided them had instead united them, creating a template for positive change that would influence law enforcement for years to come. "Ready for tomorrow's community meeting?" the young officer asked. Chen nodded, knowing that their work was far from over. But now they had something powerful on their side, proof that change was possible, that trust could be rebuilt, and that learning from mistakes could make everyone stronger. As they walked back into the station, calls coming in and officers heading out on patrol, Chen saw not just a police department, but a community of learners. Every person who wore the badge now carried not just authority, but the responsibility to keep learning, keep improving, and keep building bridges. The sun was setting on another day of positive change, but the impact of that one traffic stop would continue to light the way forward for years to come.